Now that the Falcons have their head coach, Raheem Morris has one tiny, big, major job to do, which is find a quarterback. So let's talk about who the Falcons starting QB could be for 2024, because I can guarantee you this much. It's not going to be one of these three guys. It's not going to be Taylor Heinicke, Desmond Ridder, or Logan Woodside. I think one of these three guys may very well still be on the roster. I could see Desmond Ridder being retained to be the backup. If we learned anything from the 2023 NFL season, it is you should have a pretty good backup QB because half of the teams will have to go to it at some point. So it's a good plan for the Falcons to hold on to Ridder because I think he is a very capable backup QB. But Taylor Heinicke will keep this one very short, likely gone after this season. He's got a $8.5 million cap hit for 2024, and they can save $6.5 million by releasing him. So I fully expect the Falcons to move on from Taylor Heinicke. Now, with that being said, let's talk about the three different avenues that Atlanta can go down to find their next starting quarterback, beginning with free agency. At the moment, these are the scheduled free agents for 2024. The list is headlined by Kirk Cousins. Baker Mayfield is definitely intriguing, although I think he'll stay in Tampa Bay. Gardner Minshew, I thought, did a great job in Indianapolis, and my suspicion is the Colts are going to want to hold on to him. Jameis Winston will be on the move potentially. I think he's enjoyed just hanging out and eating gumbo in New Orleans and not having to actually work, sort of. Like he's been the Alex Moran of the NFL. Jacoby Brissett, he's done a good job of being a stopgap quarterback for a lot of teams throughout his career. Sam Darnold, there's some belief that maybe Shanahan kind of resurrected his career, and after backing up Brock Purdy for a season, he could be ready to go and start elsewhere. Joe Flacco showed that he still has some gas left in the tank, and if a lot of other options fizzle out, maybe Atlanta gives him a call. I'm not interested in Ryan Tannehill, especially with Arthur Smith gone. There's really no connection anymore. Jake Browning and Mason Rudolph played well down the stretch, more so Browning than Rudolph. So maybe they land an opportunity to compete for a starting job if the Falcons bring in a rookie QB, but they don't want to just hand the job over to him. I could see Browning or Rudolph making some sense. But the big name is, of course, Kirk Cousins. And there have been some levels of conversation, at least murmurs, whispers, rumors, of Cousins down to Atlanta, going all the way back to October before the trade deadline when the Falcons were a QB away and the Vikings were losing more than winning. But I ultimately believe that Cousins will return to Minnesota. So a plan B of those options could be Gardner Minshew. What if the Falcons just throw some money his way and the Indianapolis Colts say, thank you for your service, but we are ready to proceed with our original starting quarterback, Anthony Richardson. So if other things don't go to plan for Atlanta, like if they catch wind of where the quarterbacks are going to go in the draft and they don't plan on moving up to get one of them, and they know their only option is either a round 2 or round 3 QB or a guy like Gardner Minshew, maybe they decide Minshew is the best option available. I ultimately don't think Raheem Morris, though, got this job by selling his quarterback plan to Arthur Blank on, you want to know how I'm going to turn this franchise around? You want to know how I'm going to get this 7-win stink out of Atlanta? I'm signing Jameis Winston. Like, that to me doesn't seem like a very good plan to get you the head coaching job. And I'm guessing that a big part of the conversation with every interview that the Falcons did with all their head coaching candidates was, what do you want to do at the quarterback position? So my guess is, and maybe I'm wrong, Morris has something a little bit more special cooked up than, let's get that Sam Darnold guy to Atlanta. That's what's missing from a team that's trying to win a division title. Now, some other names to keep an eye on. What about Russell Wilson? Now, he is not technically a free agent just yet, but after the Broncos benched him at the end of the season, I fully expect Denver to move on from Russell Wilson. And while the entire NFL has been laughing at Russ and getting their jokes off the last 2 seasons, and most of it deservingly so, I'm going to say Russell Wilson with the Falcons the last season would have had this team in the playoffs. Would have had this team at 9 wins and hosting a playoff game. Look what Russell Wilson did in 2023 compared to Desmond Ridder and Taylor Heinicke combined, right? 26 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, much smarter with the football, much more protective with the football than Ridder and Heinicke. So yes, Russell Wilson's stock has never been lower in his NFL career than it is right now. But I do believe Russell Wilson is better than a lot of other starting QBs. When week 1 rolls around, if you rank 1 through 32, all 32 starting quarterbacks, I don't think Wilson's number 32. I don't think Wilson was number 32 for last season. So despite the recent fall off after going from Seattle to Denver, I don't think he's as unplayable or as awful as advertised. I just think that because it's such a big step down from where he was in Seattle, people kind of view him as a beyond washed up, unplayable quarterback, when in reality, he doesn't have that same big play factor he had in the Pacific Northwest. But I still think he can play good football. I still think he can win games. He went 7-8 as a starter in Denver this season, and maybe a change of scenery and a head coach that does not hate his guts like Sean Payton did could get Russell Wilson to maximize the Atlanta Falcons roster. I'll also add one more pro for Russ. His contract is set up where when he is inevitably released by Denver, if he goes and signs for another team, whatever he signs for, that is subtracted from what the Broncos owe him. Kind of like when a college football coach gets fired, right? Their buyout. So what does that mean in English? Russell Wilson's going to take a veteran minimum deal to stick it to the Broncos, because he knows he's not going to get more money than $35 million, which what Denver owes him for 2024, from another team. So why take $10 million away from the Falcons salary cap and make it $10 million easier on the Broncos when he can take $1.5 million, the vet minimum? He's still getting paid the same amount. It's just who's writing him a check? Arthur Blank or the Walton Penner Group over in Denver? I bet he'd rather take money from the Broncos, who moved on from him, instead of the team that signed him is showing some trust in him and would love to have some extra salary cap space to spend on wide receivers and other players. So would you take Russ for a vet minimum deal? I understand that just surface level, no one really wants to be associated with Russell Wilson as their team starting quarterback right now after the last 2 years, but this is a break glass in case of emergency type of situation where if the draft doesn't really go your way and other quarterbacks in free agency return to where they are, like Cousins and Baker and Gardner Minshew, could a $1.5 million starting QB entice you? You could spend a lot of money in other positions. You got to factor in what you're paying the quarterback as well. Now, let's move on to the second avenue for Atlanta to find a new starting quarterback, the trade market. There's not a whole lot of QBs out there that I think are going to get traded, at least a starting level quarterback. There's just one name that comes to mind. I don't know if we've talked about him before on the channel. Justin Fields? Yeah, I think Fields is a Falcon. I've gone all the way back to October. Now, a big reason why Fields would come down to Atlanta is because I thought he would he'd pair very nicely, a nice red with a steak with Arthur Smith type of offense. But now that is history. Raheem Morris, we'll see what kind of offensive coordinator he brings in and what they want to run. But Justin Fields, I am not giving up on. 3 years into his young career, and we have seen some really good stuff out of Fields. We are missing a couple of things. Consistency being one. Availability for a full season being another. Like 3 years in, he's only played 15 games max out of a 17-game season. We know how important availability is. So that might ding him some points. But what Fields maybe misses in terms of consistency, in terms of reading defenses and making the right decisions and not holding on to the ball for too long, which are all issues that have plagued him in Chicago, he partially makes up for what he does on the ground. Justin Fields is arguably the best rushing quarterback we have seen since Michael Vick. Went over 1,100 yards in 2022. I mean, think about it. That's having a second running back. 1,100 yards, which you want to get at the minimum for some teams out of their starting running back. And you're getting that out of your quarterback as well. Fields is such a playmaker. The guy is just a sports car. Now, you want to keep it intact, and I don't think the Bears have done a good job of designing a coaching staff to maximize Justin Fields' strengths, but I am all in on Justin Fields. The Falcons should be all in on Justin Fields. If they don't want to use the 8th overall pick on a rookie quarterback, or if they don't think their top guy is going to be there at 8, which we'll talk about later on, and they don't really think the round 2, round 3 quarterbacks match Justin Fields' level, maybe a trade that we've been tossing out for the last 2-3 months makes more and more sense. Fields to Atlanta in exchange for the Falcons' second-round pick this year and a second-round pick next year. Remember, Atlanta right now has 1 second-round pick, but if Calvin Ridley signs a contract with the Jags, that third-round pick, that conditional trade they made with Jacksonville, that third-rounder, bumps up to a second-rounder. So the Falcons could get Justin Fields and still have a first, a top 10 pick, and a second-round pick in 2024. Now, let me know if you would do this trade. Would you trade 2 seconds for Fields? To me, this just seems like way too good of a bargain. Like, 2 seconds are nice, don't get me wrong, but if Justin Fields does not work out, I don't think you're setting yourself back because you gave up 2 second-round picks. Take Carolina, for example. If Bryce Young doesn't work out, they have set themselves back because they don't have that security first-round pick to go get another quarterback. If Fields, for whatever reason, just doesn't work out in Atlanta, you still have all your first-round picks to go and find another quarterback. I don't think 2 seconds are going to make or break the future of the Atlanta Falcons. I think Justin Fields has the potential to be a superstar at caliber quarterback for the Atlanta Falcons. Let's move on to our third and final path for finding a new quarterback for our guy, Raheem. Draft. Who could Atlanta get in the draft? There are 6 big-name quarterbacks, we'll say, in this draft. And these are my current top 5, but it's going to change. So don't put it in stone. Caleb Williams and Drake Maye are going 1 and 2. Then you've got the next tier, which is Jayden Daniels. He's kind of in his own tier, right? Williams and Maye are in an upper echelon. Daniels is just behind them, but some people even have Daniels ahead of Drake Maye. And then you've got a third tier. Micahel Penix, J.J. McCarthy, and Bo Nix. Now, if you are wondering whether or not the Falcons could move up to get Caleb or Drake Maye, I'm going to go on a limb here and say Terry Fontenot, Raheem Morris, or Arthur Blank. None of those guys strike me as people that want to give up what the Panthers gave up last year to go from 9 to 1. Right? Atlanta would be going from 8 to 1, so it wouldn't be all that different of a trade package. Arthur Blank, does he really strike you as an owner that wants to trade a whole bunch of future picks? Like, this is a risky move. I don't know if that's Arthur Blank's MO. And when you go from 8 to 1, that's something you need ownership approval on. And if Arthur Blank didn't want to risk it for the biscuit to hire Bill Belichick, which was sort of the rumor early on in the coaching search, I don't think he's going to risk it all to move up to get Caleb Williams and Drake Maye, which might sound like a surefire thing, but nothing's a surefire thing in the NFL. Which leads us to Jayden Daniels and Micahel Penix. I've got Micahel Penix as the top quarterback of that third tier, right, with JJ and with Bo Nix. But Daniels is the number one guy if you can't get Caleb or Drake Maye. Now, the question becomes, will Jayden Daniels be available at number 8? And a couple of the recent mock drafts that have come out have it all over the board, right? I've got Mel Kiper and CBS Sports putting Jayden Daniels second overall ahead of Drake Maye. And then I've got Jordan Reed from ESPN saying he goes to the Patriots third overall. And then I've got Dane Brugler, who is one of my favorite draft experts, having the Falcons get him at number 8. And then another athletic mock draft had the Vikings get him at number 11. So of the 5 mock drafts that have come out in the last month or so, 3 have him go top 3, and 2 have him be available at number 8. So it's really early in the process. I'll say this much. I am old enough to remember when last year we were told Will Levis is going to go in the first round, and he's probably going to go top 5. That didn't happen. A lot of times, the mock draft gurus and experts, in order to gain interest, they pipe up and hype up all of the quarterbacks. And then the NFL GMs laugh in April and they go, I don't know why you guys thought that guy was going round 1. So maybe this is one of those instances where people are hyping up Jayden Daniels too much, and the reality is the rest of the decision makers in the league don't think that's the case. I don't believe that applies to this situation. I think Jayden Daniels is worthy of a first-round grade, and I think he's going to go top 10. Now, whether or not he'll be there at 8, if you put all your eggs in that basket, that's risky because Chicago will likely need a quarterback, and if they trade Justin Fields to the Raiders, then Atlanta still needs a quarterback. The Commanders probably don't want to pass up on the opportunity to get a quarterback with the number 2 pick, and I remember Gerard Mayo's press conference saying, this team needs a quarterback. So that does not strike me as a team that's going to go take Marvin Harrison third overall. Now, as for that second tier in the third tier, Bo Nix and J.J. McCarthy. Bo Nix this year was extremely accurate for Oregon, 77 completion percentage. That was the best in FBS, 4,500 yards. He was a Heisman finalist. He put together a great collegiate season. But when I watch Bo Nix play, I watch dink and dunk. I watch Bo Nix capitalize on Oregon having speed, Oregon's uniforms making their players faster, and that's not going to carry over to the NFL. Now you got J.J. McCarthy, who's an interesting prospect because J.J. is a first-round potential QB for a guy that didn't throw the football a whole lot, like 2,800 yards, 25 total touchdowns. He's got great accuracy, though. Like, he can throw the ball into tight windows. I think J.J. fits more as a project QB. I don't think he's ready to start week 1 in the NFL for 2024. But if a team falls in love with some of those accuracy traits that he has displayed time and time again, and maybe just a little level of moxie and confidence and overall winning, because all he's done essentially for the last 2 years has won except for one game. So if a team sells themselves on that, I could see JJ potentially being the Falcons QB, but not at number 8 overall. That seems way too big of a risk for having a top 10 pick to use it on a quarterback that didn't throw the ball once in the second half against Penn State. So of that third tier of QBs after Drake Maye, Caleb Williams, Jayden Daniels, these 3 guys, who do you like the most? I like Micahel Penix the most. I think if Micahel Penix was a righty SEC quarterback, the national narrative would be dramatically different. But because he's a lefty, people think he's a witch, and because he played in the Pac-12, no one watched his games. I did. So I'm going with Micahel Penix. If the medicals check out, and that's a big if, because 2 torn ACLs scare the bejesus out of teams. But if the medicals check out, round 2, Micahel Penix, that's appetizing. I also just want to get it on the record. I think Joe Milton is a sleeper. Maybe my Tennessee volunteerism is coming out a little bit, class of 2020. But I think Joe Milton has a cannon of an arm. I know he has a cannon of an arm. He threw an orange the length of a football field, and he had no wide receivers to work with in Knoxville this year. You get him some NFL talent, and you put that arm talent with it. I'm just going to float this out there. Joe Milton, day 3, whichever team gets him, they're going to have one hell of a preseason. That much I can guarantee. That's going to do it for us on today's show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. We will sign off, and we'll catch up with you guys later on.